The disappearance of 21-year-old Daniel Mercer began on what should have been an ordinary Thursday night. Daniel was a journalism student at a small university located just outside a quiet town. He wasn't the type of person who attracted trouble. He had good grades, a close group of friends, and a reputation for being dependable. On October 14th, he spent most of the evening in the university library, preparing for an important exam. At approximately 10:45 p.m., Daniel packed his books, said goodbye to a few classmates, and walked toward the parking lot. That was the last confirmed sighting of him. When Daniel failed to return home, his parents initially assumed he had stayed with friends. By the next morning, however, nobody had heard from him. His phone went directly to voicemail. His car was nowhere to be found, and Daniel had completely vanished. Police launched an investigation immediately. The search covered nearby roads, forests, abandoned buildings, and surrounding towns. Within 2 days, officers discovered Daniel's vehicle parked beside an old service road nearly 15 miles from campus. The discovery created even more questions. The car was locked, the keys were missing. Daniel's backpack sat neatly in the passenger seat. His wallet was untouched. There were no signs of a struggle. No fingerprints besides Daniel's. No blood. Nothing. It looked as if he had simply stepped out of the vehicle and disappeared into thin air. Weeks turned into months. Investigators interviewed dozens of people, friends, professors, former classmates, neighbors. Nobody knew anything. Every lead ended in frustration. As the years passed, the case slowly faded from public attention. But Daniel's family never stopped searching. His mother spent countless nights reviewing old case files. His father attended every annual meeting with investigators. Neither of them could accept that their son had simply vanished. Nearly 7 years later, a new detective named Sarah Collins inherited the cold case. Most officers considered the file hopeless. Sarah disagreed. She believed every case contained a mistake, a clue someone had overlooked, something hiding in plain sight. She began reviewing every piece of evidence from the beginning: photographs, witness statements, call records, audio recordings. Boxes of forgotten material filled an entire storage room. One afternoon, Sarah discovered a cardboard box labeled Miscellaneous Audio. Inside were several cassette tapes collected during the original investigation. Most contained witness interviews. Others held environmental recordings taken from locations connected to the case. One tape caught her attention. The label read, "Parking Lot Security Audio, October 14th. Sarah inserted the cassette into an old player. Static filled the room. Then, distant sounds, car doors, footsteps, wind. For nearly 40 minutes, nothing unusual occurred. She almost turned it off. Then she heard something. A voice. Very faint, barely audible. Sarah rewound the tape, listened again and again. The voice appeared near the very end. A single sentence. So quiet, it was nearly impossible to understand. Using modern audio software, technicians enhanced the recording. The results shocked everyone. A male voice could be heard saying, "Daniel, don't tell them." The sentence lasted less than 2 seconds, but it changed the entire investigation. The question became obvious. Who was speaking? The original detectives had never noticed the voice, because the technology available at the time wasn't advanced enough to isolate it. Sarah began comparing the recording against interviews from 7 years earlier. One voice produced a surprising match. Ethan Brooks, Daniel's former roommate. The same roommate who had helped organize search parties. The same roommate who publicly supported Daniel's family. The same roommate nobody had ever suspected. At first, the evidence seemed circumstantial. A voice similarity wasn't enough. Sarah dug deeper. She reviewed Ethan's financial records, his employment history, his phone data. What she found raised serious concerns. Months before Daniel disappeared, Ethan had accumulated significant gambling debts. At the same time, Daniel had been investigating corruption involving several local business owners. According to Daniel's old notes, he had discovered evidence linking one of those businesses to illegal activities. Then Sarah uncovered something even more disturbing. A witness interview buried in the old files. A mechanic had reported seeing Daniel arguing with another young man near the service road, where the car was later found. The description loosely matched Ethan. The original investigators dismissed the statement because the witness wasn't certain. Now the interview seemed far more important. Pressure mounted. Investigators obtained a warrant to search records connected to Ethan. Hidden among old emails, they discovered deleted conversations discussing money. Large amounts of money. Transfers that occurred shortly after Daniel vanished. Confronted with the evidence, Ethan denied everything. For weeks, the investigation stalled. Then a breakthrough occurred. A retired construction worker contacted police. He claimed he had remained silent for years because he feared retaliation. The worker stated that he had seen Ethan and Daniel together near an abandoned property on the night of the disappearance. His testimony aligned with the timeline. Suddenly, the case gained momentum. Faced with mounting evidence, Ethan finally changed his story. He admitted meeting Daniel that night. According to his confession, Daniel had uncovered information that threatened powerful individuals connected to Ethan's debt problems. An argument escalated. Things spiraled out of control. The confrontation ended with Daniel's death. For years, Ethan had carried the secret. The tiny voice captured on a forgotten cassette tape had preserved the truth. 7 years of mystery unraveled because of a sentence lasting less than 2 seconds. Daniel's family finally received answers. Not the answers they wanted, but answers nonetheless. And it all began with one clue nobody had noticed. One voice, hidden beneath years of static. One forgotten tape that changed everything. When the Harper family purchased the old farmhouse on the outskirts of town, they thought they had found the perfect place for a fresh start. The property was nearly a century old, surrounded by open fields and dense woods. It had been vacant for years, and despite its age, it seemed well preserved. Mark Harper, his wife Emily, and their teenage daughter Sophie moved in during early autumn. For the first few weeks, everything felt normal. Then they decided to clean the attic. The attic stretched across the entire length of the house. Dust-covered furniture sat beneath white sheets. Old trunks lined the walls. Near the back corner, Sophie discovered a wooden box hidden beneath a pile of blankets. Inside were dozens of black and white photographs. Most showed ordinary scenes: family gatherings, birthday parties, picnics, farm work. But one photograph immediately stood out. A group of people stood outside the farmhouse sometime during the 1970s. Everyone in the image was smiling, except for one person. Near the edge of the frame stood a young woman staring directly at the camera. Unlike everyone else, she looked terrified. Her expression sent chills through Sophie's body. "Who's that?" she asked. Nobody knew. The photograph had no names written on the back. Over the next few days, Sophie became obsessed with identifying the woman. She searched through every picture in the box. The same woman appeared repeatedly, sometimes standing far in the background, sometimes partially hidden, sometimes watching from windows. Yet nobody else in the photographs seemed to notice her. The mystery fascinated the family. Curiosity soon led them to investigate the history of the farmhouse. At the local library, they found old property records, previous owners, tax documents, newspaper archives. That's when they discovered something disturbing. In 1978, a 23-year-old woman named Rachel Morgan had disappeared from the area. She was never found. According to newspaper reports, Rachel had been last seen attending a gathering at the farmhouse, the very same farmhouse the Harpers now owned. The family immediately compared Rachel's missing person photograph to the mysterious woman in the attic pictures. It was a perfect match. The unknown woman was Rachel, but that discovery only created more questions. Why had her photographs remained hidden in the attic? And why did she appear frightened in nearly every image? The Harpers contacted local authorities. Although the case was decades old, investigators agreed to review the evidence. Detective Laura Benson reopened the file. The original investigation had produced very few leads. Witnesses claimed Rachel simply left town. Others suspected foul play. No evidence ever supported either theory. As Detective Benson examined the photographs, one detail caught her attention. In a particular image, Rachel stood beside an old storage shed behind the farmhouse. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Then Benson zoomed in. A symbol had been carved into the shed's wooden wall. The mark appeared in several photographs. The same symbol, the same location. Repeated again and again, investigators visited the property. The shed still existed, though partially collapsed from age. After clearing away vegetation and debris, they found the carved symbol exactly where the photographs suggested. Closer inspection revealed something strange. The ground beneath the structure seemed uneven, almost as if it had been disturbed long ago. Excavation began the following morning. Workers removed decades of dirt and debris. Several feet below the surface, they discovered a concealed hatch. The hatch led into a small underground storage space. Inside were personal belongings, a necklace, a handbag, articles of clothing. Every item belonged to Rachel Morgan. The discovery shocked the entire town. For nearly 50 years, evidence had remained hidden beneath the property. Investigators searched the chamber thoroughly. Among the items, they found an old journal. Much of it had deteriorated with time. However, several entries remained readable. The journal revealed a troubling story. Rachel had been working for a local businessman who frequently hosted gatherings at the farmhouse. During her employment, she learned information that could have exposed serious crimes involving several influential people. She feared for her safety. Repeatedly, she wrote about feeling watched, followed, threatened. The final entry was written just days before she disappeared. One sentence stood out. "If anything happens to me, the answer is beneath the shed." The words felt almost impossible to ignore. Rachel had apparently hidden evidence before vanishing. Further excavation uncovered another container buried beneath the chamber floor. Inside were documents linking multiple individuals to fraud, extortion, and financial crimes that had operated for years. Most of those responsible were no longer alive, but investigators finally understood why Rachel had become a target. She knew too much. The evidence suggested she planned to expose everything. Someone discovered her intentions before she could act. The mystery that had haunted the town for decades was finally beginning to make sense. Yet one question remained. What happened to Rachel herself? Months later, forensic teams expanded the search area around the property. Deep within a section of woodland behind the farmhouse, they located human remains. DNA testing confirmed the identity. Rachel Morgan had finally been found, nearly 50 years after her disappearance. The news spread quickly throughout the community. For Rachel's surviving family, the discovery brought both grief and relief. The uncertainty that had lasted generations was finally over. Detective Benson later admitted that the entire case hinged on a detail most people would never have noticed. A tiny carved symbol visible in the corner of an old photograph. One small clue hidden in plain sight. Without it, Rachel's secret would likely have remained buried forever. The mysterious woman staring from the attic photographs was no longer an unknown face. She was Rachel Morgan, and decades after she disappeared, one forgotten photograph finally told her story. For nearly 10 years, investigative journalist Michael Reed had built a reputation for uncovering stories that powerful people wanted buried. Corrupt officials, financial scams, organized crime. Michael had exposed them all. His work earned awards, but it also earned enemies. Still, he never seemed afraid. According to friends, Michael believed that the truth was always worth the risk. That belief would eventually lead him into the most dangerous investigation of his life. And it would end with his disappearance. It began during the summer of 2019. Michael told several colleagues that he was working on a major story, a story bigger than anything he had ever published. He refused to discuss details. Whenever people asked questions, he simply smiled and changed the subject. The secrecy wasn't unusual. Investigative reporters often protected sensitive information. But as weeks passed, Michael became increasingly cautious. Friends noticed strange behavior. He constantly checked over his shoulder. He changed routes while driving. He stopped using certain phones. One colleague later recalled that Michael looked exhausted, as though he hadn't slept properly in weeks. Then, on August 17th, he vanished. Michael failed to appear for an important meeting. His editor called repeatedly. No answer. Friends visited his apartment. Nobody responded. Eventually, police entered the residence. The scene was strange. Nothing appeared stolen. His wallet remained on the kitchen counter. His laptop sat open on the desk. His car was parked outside. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of violence, no indication of where he had gone. It looked as though he had simply disappeared in the middle of an ordinary day. The investigation quickly gained national attention. A missing journalist attracted headlines. Authorities searched phone records, emails, financial accounts, and surveillance footage. Yet every lead ended the same way. Nothing. Weeks became months. Months became years. The case slowly transformed into another unsolved mystery. Most people assumed the truth would never be known, but 3 years later, an accidental discovery changed everything. Michael's former colleague, Jessica Carter, was helping organize archived files for a documentary about missing journalists. While reviewing Michael's old notebooks, she noticed something odd. Certain words appeared repeatedly throughout his notes. At first, She assumed it was coincidence. Then she saw the pattern. The repeated words appeared in specific positions, always the third word of a sentence, always written in slightly darker ink. Curious, Jessica began writing them down. The result made her heart race. The words formed a message. Watch the harbor warehouse. Jessica immediately contacted investigators. Detectives examined the notebooks. The hidden message was genuine. Someone had intentionally concealed information within ordinary writing. Michael had apparently anticipated danger. He had left clues in case something happened to him. Authorities searched records connected to the harbor district. One abandoned warehouse quickly drew attention. The building had been purchased years earlier through a series of shell companies. Ownership records were intentionally difficult to trace. Investigators obtained warrants. What they discovered inside shocked everyone. The warehouse contained evidence of a massive criminal operation. Hidden rooms, financial records, computers, false identities. The site had apparently served as a hub for money laundering and illegal transactions worth millions of dollars. Michael had been investigating the organization before his disappearance. The discovery explained why he had become a target, but investigators still didn't know who was responsible. The answer emerged from another clue. Among Michael's notebooks, detectives found additional coded messages. Unlike the first, these were hidden using initials. The initials pointed toward several individuals connected to the criminal network. One name appeared repeatedly: Victor Hale, a wealthy businessman with significant political connections. Publicly, Victor appeared respectable. Privately, evidence suggested something very different. Investigators began examining his activities. Financial records linked him to multiple shell companies. Witnesses described suspicious meetings. Former associates suddenly became willing to talk. The pressure mounted. Eventually, one insider agreed to cooperate. The witness revealed that Michael had uncovered proof connecting Victor Hale to the criminal operation. According to testimony, Michael planned to publish everything. Victor learned about the investigation, and he decided to stop it. The witness described secret meetings, threats, and attempts to locate Michael's evidence. Authorities launched a large-scale operation. Several arrests followed. Computers seized during the raids contained encrypted files. After months of analysis, investigators recovered deleted communications. The messages confirmed that Michael had become a problem for the organization, a problem they intended to eliminate. The evidence finally provided answers. Not only had Michael uncovered the truth, but he had also predicted that something might happen to him. That was why he left clues, messages hidden in plain sight, words buried within ordinary notes, a trail designed for someone to follow. Years after his disappearance, investigators eventually located evidence revealing what happened during Michael's final days. His work had brought him dangerously close to exposing powerful criminals. The organization responded by silencing him. The revelation sparked nationwide outrage. Several high-profile convictions followed. Corrupt networks that had operated for years began collapsing, all because one journalist refused to stop searching for the truth, and because he left behind one final clue: a message hidden where nobody thought to look. At the conclusion of the investigation, Detective Robert Hayes summarized the case with a statement many people would remember. The truth wasn't hidden in a locked safe or buried underground. It was sitting on a shelf the entire time. One small pattern, one hidden message. One clue overlooked for years, and it changed everything. For Michael Reed, justice arrived far too late, but his determination ensured that the truth eventually surfaced. Even after he was gone, his final story was never published. Yet in the end, it accomplished exactly what he intended. It exposed the people who believed they would never be caught, and it all began with a message hidden in plain sight.